Welcome to the Curmudgeon in the Cellar. I'm wearing my Curmudgeon hat because I'm going to rant on steam. You can't see it, but there's actually steam coming out of my ears. It's been days now. Some little shit on Gmail has been trying to hack my account again and again and again. My question is, why in the hell can't you see that steam? Why can't you see repeated? All right. And it's not anything that looks like anything associated with my account that I've been on for years. I don't like the idea of Steam. I don't like that the only way I could buy a game was to spend money and only play it through their platform. And now I see why. Some people are telling me, oh, I need this double authentication. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to go that route. But why the hell do I need it? Several people have commiserated with me. Several people said they've had no problems whatsoever. Well, I would think that with tens of thousands of customers, some of you are going to be lucky. A word that I've heard a lot lately in connection to Steam is arrogance. A certain disaffected group think that they've become arrogant because, after all, you're paying by subscription. Why do they need to listen to you? I've been an unwilling Steam client for many years, and they can't see. They don't have some kind of internal thing to show them that, hey, there's something strange going on here. My question is, why the hell is somebody hacking me? Not going to learn any game playing secrets. All right. Excuse me for one moment. Okay. So, in honor of the season, I'll be a little more festive each week as we get closer and closer to Christmas. I'm real fired up about tonight's. I got a lot of commentary to read and to answer to. And so I'll begin right now. This respondent says, I've always played paladins like I think Superman would. Not that he's invulnerable, etc., but how he tried to do the right, good thing. That doesn't mean you have to be an asshole just because you're good, but you tend to try and influence others to be good as well. And that's fine. It's great. Yeah, I got a lot of paladin stories that I don't need to go into, but you're absolutely right. That's a great way to play them. Doing the great thing. I'm doing the right thing. Defending the weak and the innocent against the evil. In a similar vein, people that have a historical knowledge regarding the real world Templar Knights et al., as well as real world druids, tend to play them with much more variation. Of course, this can be said about any of the classes as they relate to the particular game setting being played. Absolutely. And that idea is going to run through a couple of other things coming later in this video. This thread of this, there's a thread running through several of these questions. And that's right. We metagame, whether we say we do or not, in that we play our roles as we have formed in our minds our roles should be played. I know that sounds a little circumlocutory, but it is. You can't not metagame like that if you're playing anything that you've read about, whether it's science fiction or fantasy or whatever. The only time that I ever participated in an exception to that, and I'm sure there are other occasions where this has happened, where we were drawn into play test the whole concept behind the Starship Warden and Metamorphosis Alpha. And we were primitive tribesmen who had left their tribal area, and we had no metagaming knowledge on how to be a primitive tribesman. So we stumbled and bumbled and fumbled our way through. So yeah, having some background in it, and how you get the background, again, relates to some other things I'll talk about later. What was it like playing Jeru Ashstaff during the development of the Temple of Elemental Evil? I didn't. I was Jeru in the village of Hamlet. Because of different forces within what was going on at TSR, my focus on periodicals, the magazines, and the other stuff we were doing, and sort of a very pleasant, long-awaited for divorcement from that part of the company's production, not being involved in that anymore, which was always only ever going to be a temporary thing. I played Jeru when Hamlet was being tested. I was probably only there for about half of the sessions. Every other session I wasn't there. They made up another bawdy verse about Tim the Lusty Druid before Jeru was named. And I never did go into the Temple of Elemental Evil or anything like that. A lot of that was done at the other buildings, literally away from what I was doing. So I only got Jeru off and running as a lusty druid who apparently was extremely friendly with just about anything that lived in the forest. Okay, can you talk about the difference in experiences between? All right, this is an interesting point, and I've often pondered this myself. Between DMs who are only DMs versus people who are only players. I was a DM for 10 years and never was a player. Now I play, and it's a bizarre experience. Totally different game. I can't DM now because I don't know all the rules for 5th. Okay, you can DM any game system you want. If everybody that you know is playing 5th, well, okay, you can see the problem. You can also try and suborn them. Say, hey, I got this game we can play late tonight, and try to introduce them to a different game. But it's a very valid question. In my own personal experience, which is obviously, unique, I played twice. Once very briefly before we were TVK'd. And then I DM'd extensively, heavily for the next year and a half, roughly, at Carbondale. And I was the only DM. And I was purely running the game to have fun, but also we were testing out. I was testing stuff. Gary was asking me to try stuff. And so I only DM'd, and then didn't run any campaigns after I left after I left TSR. And now I have found in the last 10 or 12 years, I've been asked to be a player in celebrity games. And you're right. No matter how well you know the basic physical laws of the game you're playing in, being on the other side of the screen is indeed very different. And I don't know if people who are primarily DMs make real good players. And I say that because of the personalities involved in being the personalities on either side of the screen. I'm certain there are exceptions to every rule, but for a DM to sit on the other side and begin to play, I would think that they would, as I have. Oh, I wouldn't do that way. What? What do you say? How that works? Okay, they would be perhaps even more prone to nitpick the adventure than a non-DM. I don't know. And I certainly can't speak for everybody that plays role-playing games. It would be my impression that some people that are players wouldn't want to be a DM for love nor money. And that's great. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want to have to think up the thinking stuff. And the thinking stuff plays out in another place we're going here later. So some players have become, a few players I'm certain have become good DMs. They love their love of the game playing, and they found themselves in a circumstance if they didn't DM, nobody would. And they love role playing enough to say, okay, I'll sit on the other side. I don't know, because I imagine the numbers are much fewer, how I would think that DMs who found themselves with no groups anymore, that hadn't retired on their own, would possibly lose interest. I don't know. I can't say for sure. I do know that having been a DM, when I do play in these celebrity games, I am much more likely to think wildly outside the box and think up something clever enough that if the person running it hadn't already thought of it, he would at least give it a listen, or, give it a shot. Again, if you were playing, first edition or OD&D, where, anything is possible. Interesting, though. Good thought. Yeah, and if you do, all your players play one edition and you don't know it, yeah, obviously. Maybe you got to play for a while to learn that. I don't know. Okay, back to the discussion of giant cockroach versus Bullette. Anyone who's ever encountered household cockroaches would agree they'd have some agility advantage over a four-legged creature. But yeah, now you mention it, a gladiator pit, the Bullette would win. You're talking a pit bull versus a giant squirrel. Yet the roach, like the squirrel, would run up a wall, a tree, or even fly away. You're right, but again, we're talking about cage match. No running up the wall and flying away. Obviously, you're taking away the advantages of both animals. The Bullette's ability to burrow and the cockroach's ability to run up the wall and across the ceiling. Put them in a cage and let's go. And make the cage not so tall that the cockroach can run to the top and the Bullette can't. Again, if you're into that kind of thing and pitting animals against each other, which I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. Okay. We're going to talk about dice tonight. Got a couple of... I think this individual references a spot on the video. Dice are platonic solids, an artistic, alchemical, hermetic sacrament. D4 equal fire, D6 equal earth, D8 equal air, D12 equal spirit, and D20 equal water. Who doesn't already know that? Well, I didn't. I've done a lot of research on dice over the years, as you might imagine, and I'll reference some of that a little later. Okay, this individual quoted an actor named Crispin Hellion Glover, who said, "Play comedy like tragedy and tragedy like comedy. But one has to be sensitive as to what the element of tragedy or comedy is." Okay, yeah. All right. I guess if you want to take role playing to that next level, I guess the whole point of some early 12-year-old teenager with no active wild imagination from some tragic, disparaged situation, usually bad family and bully public schools being the overarching two, who takes to fantasy fiction and RPG like a fish to water, kind of makes for the immature, ridiculous, introverted irony of my way or the highway narcissism in a fictional world, which has a cure in humor and hyperbole. Okay, and I didn't write that. I read it to you. Anyway, I can't imagine you disagreeing. Well, if I fully understood that, I might. In this case, I'll reserve judgment. And I totally imagine Gary Gygax, along with a lot of veterans into RPG put forth. I read them as I get them. I'm not even sure what that is, except maybe, it's all a game and play for the laughs when you can and be sensitive to when it's serious, I guess. Okay. Did you ever encounter RPG gamers, especially good DMs or GMs, who study astrology intensely, test each player character based on their natal horoscopes? Duly noted, Gary was a double moon and sun sign Leo. No, no, I've never heard of a campaign. Now, to have an NPC who casts horoscopes and stuff like that would be a juicy tidbit to have as part of your campaign ongoing. That could be the hook feeder, where's the next adventure coming? But no, I never decided, to have them what day of the year, what sign was ascending and all that. I figured if I ever thought about it that deeply, that the dice probably did it. Do magical weapons with level drain take away the monster's special abilities? I see players lose level experience, hit dice, and gained abilities. Why not monsters? Why not? That's a very interesting question. First argument on behalf of the monsters, theirs are innate abilities. They're born doing those things, or they're entitled to be doing those things, or they've been empowered to do those things. Excuse me. That said, if a magic weapon had a particular effect, sapping willpower, draining intelligence, whatever, something like that, I see no reason why it would not work on a monster. And given the disparity between a particular monster and a human, intelligence-wise, et cetera, it might do it really well against a lesser creature. It might, if I might, again, I've not faced this. I might let it have a temporary blocking effect, but not permanent, because what I perceive as monsters' abilities are innate to the monster. They they possess the ability Displacer Beast. This year's game whole stuffed animal. Yeah, I can't remember what the anyway. Plushie. That's it. Plushie. They can blink around. If you had a weapon that was a successful strike would slow another human or in some way inhibit them or reduce them to 1/4 speed or something of this nature, then certainly I would see a case for applying it in some form against a monster. Maybe he doesn't do quite as good, or maybe it does even better. Again, adjusting for the scale between the sword wielder and the target. Lesser creature, better creature. Good English, huh? As far as level experience and stuff like that, if you're fighting it, aren't you doing that all at the same time too, so you finally kill it? Now, that said, I've had where I've written it in more often than not, but occasionally when the party just needed just a break because they hadn't caught one yet. I've had ill monsters. Somebody, the thing they encountered was already beat up, so it was relatively easy to dispatch. Yeah, I've done that, especially at cons. Let's see, what's next? Okay. Somebody wants to know about my Universal Antidote. Okay, I don't give one to each of the players. I give out a number equal to half the number of the players, and I generally round up in the players' favor. So if there's 6 in the group, because a lot of my wheel of blames are 6 to 8, and it works out really well, though I can take 8 to 10, and it's just a slightly longer game with many more laughs. In any event, so the Universal Antidote is something I actually came up with it the first time when I was still in Carbondale. And we had guys just getting croaked off all the time. So they found at the end of a quest 3 Universal Antidotes. And I, fluffed it all up. Oh yeah, my God, these are a thing of legend. They'll fix, cure, anything. And when I left all those months later and all those sessions, and remember we played at least once a week, and oftentimes twice, 2 of them were still unused. One of them, the used one had changed hands and was then used, and one of the other had changed hands for an enormous sum of money. So only one person that originally got one still had it, but 2 were still used many, many months later. And as far as gameplay at the conventions, the Universal Antidote is just that. When I first started coming back to conventions and running games, 06, 07, 08, something like that, especially tournament games, not just, exclusive games that I was running for collectors and stuff, I was pretty old school ruthless. And people were, I was letting them die in 40 minutes. Not necessarily the whole party, but Frank Menser said, hey, these people actually pay money, or, they commit to these. They ought to get to play for a little while and not just have to sit at the table, or worse yet, leave. And I said, yeah, you're right. Okay. So I started handing out Universal Antidotes. still TPK'd several parties. But the thing was, you got an arm lopped off in the first 40 minutes or something. The Universal Antidote fixed anything. Dribble a little on your lips and it reverses petrification. It cures poison. It smears some on your shoulder joint and stick the arm on, whatever. It was originally intended as it's too early for you to have to leave type of thing. So we had more fun at the table. Now with the Wheel of Blame, it's become more necessary to have those available. And in only one occasion have I had a Wheel of Blame party not come out intact. They'd gone in with 3 Universal Antidotes and needed 4. And the person who didn't come out had used 2 of them. So there was some sort of karma there. But that's all the Universal Antidote is. It can be something of an enormous value, because you can't be poisoned, nothing, anything like that. In game terms, it's just something fun, and it allows somebody to play along a little longer in the group and have fun. I think that questions up. No, and physical like a potion or abstract like that. No, it's a potion. It's a little tiny bottle that looks a lot like a glue bottle, for want of anything else. I've never, potion is whatever you think in your mind. Most people think of little clay bottles with a thin neck on them. All right, let's see. We've got a lot of stuff. Oh, okay. To the gentleman that got the acquire cards, I'm going to read through this some more. If you can find out anything more about it, sweet. I also got to make sure I can find an acquire game. I don't currently have one, but I will. Okay. This one's okay. I answered a question about the Arduin cease and desist. Currently, D&D has the open gaming license, allowing others to use intellectual property under certain circumstances. Yeah, they do, don't they? And I have a theory as how that came about as a poison pill that somebody wrote and made sure that gamers would always be able to keep loving their game. Yeah, if you go by the OGL, the outside gaming license, you can. It just means that you acknowledge what's theirs, and that's fine. There's some monsters you can't ever use under the OGL. Bullette isn't one of them. Okay, how did TSR handle such things during my tenure? When did you allow third parties to use the system, and when was the litigation the response? Well, during my tenure, when I had anything to do with it, the only people at the time that had a, quote, license, if you will, were the Judges Guild. And the way it was handled was they put together a product and they sent it to TSR. And then Gary handed it to me and said, vet this and see if they've broken any major rules or stuck in new stuff that we don't want. And so I would go through it and vet it. And in almost every occasion, didn't change anything. A couple of times I asked for clarification. And then we got a piece of the action when they sold them. And I couldn't tell you what it was. I don't know. I wasn't in that end of the business. That would have been Brian, and then later Brian and Kevin. So I don't know exactly. Anything else that was licensed? Nothing that I knew of during my tenure while I was there. A lot of that licensure happened in the early 80s when they started cashing in on the name. But while I was there, the name didn't have the cachet yet to cash in on. Cache, Cashin. Sounds like a Vietnamese poem. Okay, what's next? Overpowered characters, not exactly like alignments and alignment chains. Okay, this gentleman, this respondent, I keep a public confidence meter type thing running. This affects pricing of the overpowered magic items and public relations. As long as they're being heroes, they get the hero's welcome. If they start abusing that privilege, they may find very stone and cold receptions, even outright hostile denials. And he calls it his fame infamy bar, and modified by charisma. And as an example, he talks about the old school paladin walks into a bar, everybody gets nervous. Same paladin walks in the town meeting regarding the encroaching orc horde, and everybody offers in the seat highest up in the room, slinks into the shadows, or their faces beam with genuine goodwill. It's the bored expression of the beaming smile that's the factor of the. Okay, that's an interesting idea, and it's a really effective way. Beyond what we old schoolers used to do is just throw them out if they got rowdy, or just inflate the prices when all that gold flooded the market. Now, again, remember, everything we do is makeup, fantasy, made up. Jolly Blackburn leads the way in showing how that can work. That band of ne'er-do-wells slaughters half a town, and they get thrown out and chased by a huge posse. And if that's the level of detail you go to, sweet. Again, it all depends on the framework of your the depth of your con. Okay. The next one. Gary question. Library a few years ago, and they had fairly beat up fiction. Okay. Apparently written by Gary. From catching up in the different blogs, I have never heard of him to write books on top of everything else. Well, he did. He wrote some Gord the Rogues. How much of them he wrote and how much he wrote with a co-writer or a ghostwriter, I could not tell you. I do know that when I was convinced of the good idea it would be to publish a couple pieces of a story that he had written in early Dragon magazines, the stories weren't very good. I'm told his writing of stories got much better. Couldn't tell you how or why that came about, whether he started co-writing with someone, I don't know. But yeah, he did write stories. Gary was just, and keep in mind, this is pencil, pen, and typewriter. He was constantly churning out stuff. Man's mind never slowed down. Okay, yeah, they were Gord the Rogue. I don't know. There may have been as many as 5 or 6. You'd have just look up Gord the Rogue. All right, now this is the one I was talking about. I referenced earlier. Did you know that the pips on dice exist? Because dice rolling is older than general literacy, and yes. I have studied dice to the role they play in our culture of gaming. That if I wasn't turning 71 in a few weeks and wanted to get another degree, I would get a degree, and my dissertation would be on the nearly pagan idolatry that dice elicit in our hobby. Dice go back to 3000 BC. Dice used to look something, the first dice used to look something like this. This one has been squared, but the other ones were long and had four flat sides that it could land on. These are talus bones out of the feet, ankles of either sheep or oxen. where it's where Roll the Bones comes from. You don't need pips to gamble. The Romans played a dice game in bars and that, shaker, the whole cup, the whole thing with symbols on it. And it didn't matter if you were Roman speaking Latin or a Greek off a sailing ship, everybody knew those universal games. Everybody. So we didn't need spots. Now, they eventually sawed down the talus bones until they got a six-sider, which is much what this looks like now. The polyhedron's been around since the Greeks. Actually, since before the Greeks. In fact, I jotted down a few notes from some research I've done in the past. Let's see. Where's the notes I jotted? Oh, here we go. 20-sided dice probably originated in Ptolemaic Egypt, where the Romans found them, and we found 20-siders in Rome. They didn't have to go to Egypt to find them. Being Rome, they traded with everyone, and of course, as they relied on Egypt for grain, it's easily understood how they got up there. Let's see. Yeah, they found them in the 2nd century AD and Ptolemaic Egypt in the 2nd century BC, and dice and divination and stuff has gone hand in hand. Some theories say that dominoes and playing cards are an outgrowth of dice. That it was first, gambling with dice, and then anyway. Yeah, they didn't need spots to gamble. And you still had to have some sort of language, because if you're rolling for higher numbers or low, that's a pretty important thing to know if you're putting your money down on the line. But no, they certainly make it easier. Okay, here we go. Back to one of my favorite no, actually, it's a favorite topic. Psionics is hot again, as 5e just released some playtest material. In the 76 forward, the Eldritch Wizardry wrote, when all the players had all the rules in front of them, then it became next to impossible to beguile them into the danger or mischief. Well, yeah, that was the thing. When everybody had a copy of the rules and you knew how stuff worked, it got a lot harder to lot harder on the DMs. The introduction of psionic combat is bound to enliven games grown stagnant. Yes. What was I thinking then? Have my thoughts since? Did I think that psionics were good for the game in 76? With what we intended, yeah, I think they were good for the game in 76, and I still think they have their place. However, we only thought we thought psionics. Well, okay, let me back up. Getting dry eyes. I put psionics in Eldritch Wizardry because I told Gary we needed psionics because we couldn't have monsters like brain eaters and brain moles and mind flayers and have no defense against them, because that meant that if any DM put a mind flayer in the game, if they couldn't find him and kill him, he would just eat everybody and just flay everybody's intelligence and win every time. So what we intended, and the way they were originally ruled, it would be an extremely rare occasion when a player would have a latent psionic ability. But we also envisioned them as a specialist for hire. And if you know where you're going someplace that's got brain moles, we'll take the guy with the big bulgy head that says he can keep them away from you. But as with everything else during that period of time, players seized the bit between their teeth and ran with it to a crazy extent. I still think they're worth having. If you're going to have monsters that can attack psionically, you have to have abilities to fight them off. And it shouldn't be just, ring, anti-psionic ring. You can't get me. I was thinking then that the players needed a fair shake. I think now that the players ran with it and took it way beyond where we thought, but so many other things did that, the enthusiasm in the game. But I still think they have a place. And yeah, when all the players had all the rules, yeah, we had to make up new, as this person said, made up new shit. And he has a player that's read the monster manual, but I rarely throw something at him that is by the book. Well, I don't believe in by the book as a blind following anyway. I always modify, and never, very seldom is anything consequential by the book. So I'm tuned in there. Yeah, in the early days when people were learning, and keep in mind that in 1974, the box set was $10. This set of dice was $5, and Greyhawk was $5, and $20 was a buttload of money, especially if you were a college student in 1974 or 1975. And in my case, I was the first one to bring it back. And so for several months, nobody in the group even had one. I wish they had. I could have loaned them out more frequently and more people, because I was always, sure, just make sure you bring it back Wednesday night when we play. If you don't, we'll come hunt you down. So it always came back. But yeah, nobody had the rules. I could tell them that, because the sky's purple today and that chicken is yellow, they're all -5 on their. Yeah, they didn't know. So yeah, I got harder. And when rules lawyers started appearing, which came around the time of first edition being published, became more of a problem. All right, next thing. Where do we go? Okay, here's a good one. And these next two kind of tie together, and a reference back to an earlier one. Because the editions were not highly published, they seem to have been actively encouraged adaptation, experimentation, and home brewing. Everyone in my early group had a different world, and all those worlds were different. Do you think the latter editions and the current Faith 5e lend themselves less well to adaptability and thus diversity and imagination? Okay, let me read the next comment and then I'll try to give you an answer that encompasses both. And this next one starts with a line. It really made me feel old and hairy and scary. You've lived through a time in history where entertainment such as radio programs and novels influence imagination. Okay, what novels, programs, motion pictures, etc. influenced you the most pre-1974? Fair enough question. Again, Appendix N is a lot of the stuff I read pre-74. However, as a boy, a lot of the really good, well, by today's standard, horrible, but by the day's standard, the really good Knights in Armor movies, the Ivanhoe and the Black Falcon, and all those movies were coming out, and Tony Curtis and that, and I was eating those up, not knowing any better at the time how hokey the armor was or anything. I didn't care. I was also watching whatever was playing at the Roxy or the Paradise that weekend, because the movies were 25 cents on the weekend. I didn't go to Godzilla and all those. What wasn't my bag, but I did go to every sword and sandal movie, the Italian movies, Hercules and Hannibal and stuff like that. And I can remember a Hannibal movie with Victor Mature that was great, and that's the movies that I got into. I saw this, some of the other popular stuff, but the stuff that you dig on TV. I was into the Three Stooges and old Warner Brothers cartoons. And when I was probably in the second or third grade, would have been mid-early 50s, I had the lovely misfortune of getting mumps and measles, both within the same about 5-week period. So I was out of school for about 3 weeks out of that period. And I can remember listening to radio soaps. I couldn't tell you if they were still playing anything later at night. And some people have said that, yeah, they listened to other, more adult stuff late at night. But I didn't stay up late at night. And if I was up late at night listening to something on the radio, it was a ball game. The soaps really didn't. What they did for me was they made me see the story in my head. One very good story. A couple of them ended up on TV. They've been on radio forever. Guiding Light, and there's another one, I think, that ended up on TV and ran for years and years and years. They influenced me, seeing the Sword and Sandal movies and I remember when the Vikings came out with Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis and Taras Bulba, and a lot of those movies they were filming in Europe at the time. The horrible one with Orson Welles as Genghis Khan, or the worst one with John Wayne as a Mongol. I ate that stuff up. I loved it. What I read was Lamb and Scott and Heinlein. First science fiction book was Starship Troopers. Okay, this is a long question, but it's a quick answer. You mentioned this in other shows about Avalon Hills 1914, how you first played a fair amount while in the service. Questions: could you tell us a little more about the background, and was it hard to pull off? But he would think the personal space on a warship. Well, yeah, I'm in the service is not just out at sea. In fact, I only did about 10 and a half, 11 months at sea during my period of 4 years service, 4 years minus 100 days. And we played on the base while we weren't deployed, because I was in an aircraft squadron, and they rotated. They weren't deployed all the time. They had to come back, refit, reintegrate new personnel, discharge, leaving personnel. And so I did all my 1914 playing on land, obviously, because no, you couldn't lay a board out and play. Well, number one, you don't get 48 hours of playing time uninterrupted on board a ship. And that's about what it took, because we would start on Friday evening and play until Monday morning. So this was all in barracks, in the laundry room, as it so happens. Now, on board ship, we played a choir. We played, somebody had a feudal game for a while, and then it somehow disappeared. So a couple of us were playing feudal, which was, a very simple 3-on-board game. But we also played the gamers. All the guys that played a choir played cards. Not all the guys that played cards played a choir. We also played a game called Hanafuda, which was with a Japanese deck of thick pasteboard cards. The game was looked down upon as a silly pastime for women, and what geishas did and they're lolling around in their free time. Well, never knew a sailor that didn't think highly of geishas. And so we didn't care what anybody else thought. It was a very interesting game. I still have a couple of decks. It's very much like Big Casino. It's a matching game, and it's got suits, bunch of suits. And then we played cards, because you really, there is no space. Particularly, I was on the USS Ranger, and I believe the Ranger was designed to hold about 37 or 3,800 crew, and we had close to 5,000 on board. So space was an incredible premium. That's why if you had a gaming urge, you played cards, or checkers or chess. If you had one of those little portable sets that had pegs in the bottom, a lot of guys played chess. Let's see. Yeah, sometimes we did have to hurry up. On Monday morning, we had to figure out, okay, it's almost, yeah, you probably won. Okay, we got to pick it up and make muster. Yeah, Hanafuda is called the flower game. Let's see. Now, I got a couple things here. What did I write that on? First off, I got a couple of products to talk about that I think are worth you looking at, particularly being the Hollywood season. Oh, and I said earlier today, if you want to go see a really good movie, go see Dark Waters. I really enjoyed it. The fact that it's based around a story that had a heavy grounding in Cincinnati just makes it that much cooler. But it's also a very, very good film. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, new game I played. I'll show it to you. It's called Scoville. It's by TMG. I don't know, a couple of years old maybe. Really simple concept, really fun to play, lots of subtleties. Simple game. Plant peppers. Walk through the pepper patch and collect peppers. Ah, but which peppers? What colors? Because this pepper crossed with that pepper produces that color. Very interesting. And I hear they have an expansion. So I'm getting that too. Anytime, you like the first game, you got to have the expansions. Even if they suck, you can say you got it. Great game. Then I was sent a couple of samples of a product. This comes from the Wizards people. Well, actually, the company that does this type of stuff for the Wizards. I think I showed you once before. I got two of these in this young. I don't know if you can read that. It's the Young Adventurer's Guide. This one's called Dungeons and Tombs. This is a really, really brilliant idea. In that, and I'm going to be cynical here for a minute. If I was looking to inculcate and brainwash a whole new generation of wargamers, this is how I do it. Because these don't have any stats, they don't have any tables, they don't have anything. This one's about dungeons and tombs. Others are about warriors and weapons, and I think there's one about going on adventures. And there's 4 of them. I have 3 of them. Really interesting. And if you've got an avid reader in your family, whether it's your kid, your nephew, your niece, and you think they might, they read through these 4 books all together, and they've got all the tools we never had to leap in and now play in this world of made-up fantasy. Great idea. I really salute this idea. And it's not just cynical. It's 10-Speed Press that keeps sending me these. And then, if you're looking for a dandy little stocking stuffer for that role player, especially D&D'er, you need to get them. And I get nothing from these people. Please understand, this is not a paid endorsement. I think it's neat. That's all. Bestiary, they call it. It's 8 little mini notebooks with keen art on them. They all have different art. And 2 of the notebooks are blank. 2 of the notebooks are lined. 2 of the notebooks are dotted. And 2 of the notebooks have graph squares. Brilliant idea. I'm not sure that these, being as small as they are, it's the only criticism that I might have. As small as these books are, and as tightly bound as they are, okay, this is their size. Neat. It's going to be hard to get into the center of the book without breaking the binding. However, that said, that's a very minor quibble. And again, because I'm not being paid for it, I feel compelled to mention a minor quibble. As the proceeding weeks pass, the headgear is going to get increasingly festive. However, the topics, I hope, will remain game-oriented. Send me comments, please. That's what we get. Wow, what a long episode tonight. Had no idea I'd gone on this long. So all I'll say is thanks for listening and watching. Dodada go be. Good night. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard brain. PSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.